You know the name Miguel de Cervantes, right? The guy who wrote Don Quixote, a literary giant? But what if I told you he wrote another story, one that's so morally twisted, so baffling, that for 400 years it's just completely stumped everyone? Well, we're going to dive into this mystery, because it turns out Cervantes himself may have left us the key to unlock it all.
Okay, so the story is called La Fuerza de la Sangre. That's the force of blood. It's from a collection he called his exemplary novels, published way back in 1613. And the plot, well, let's just say it's a real challenge for anyone reading it today.
This quote from the critic William Clamuro just nails it. He calls the story a black hole of interpretation. And that's a perfect way to put it, right? Because anytime you try to apply a normal moral lens, or even just logic, it all gets sucked in and disappears. On the surface, the story's ending is just indefensible. And here it is. This is the core of that black hole. A young noblewoman named Leocadia is abducted and brutally assaulted by a man named Rodolfo. 7 years pass. Then, through some crazy twist of fate, they meet again, and the story ends with them falling in love and getting married. Yeah, so the big question is, what on earth was Cervantes thinking?
To even begin to answer that, we have to start with the assumption that Cervantes, the literary genius, was smarter than us. And as it turns out, he basically told everyone that there was more to these stories than meets the eye.
Right there, in the prologue to the exact same book the story is in, Cervantes writes that there is a hidden mystery in these novels that elevates them. It's like he's winking at the reader, practically daring us to find the deeper meaning. He knew the surface of the story was troubling. That was the point. He wanted us to dig deeper. And here is the key, the solution that some scholars have proposed. The mystery isn't about social customs or psychology. It's esoteric. The whole story, from its brutal start to its bizarre finish, is a carefully constructed allegory for the spiritual process of alchemy. So, to crack this code, we first need a little crash course in alchemy. And look, forget everything you've seen in movies. We are not talking about wizards trying to turn lead into actual gold. This is something way more profound. The goal of what they called the magnum opus, or the great work, was all about inner transformation. It was a symbolic roadmap for purifying the human soul, breaking it down to its rawest, most basic state, and then building it back up into a perfected, enlightened whole. That was the true Philosopher's Stone. And this great work was always understood to happen in 3 major stages, each one tied to a color. First, you have negredo, the blackening. Then comes albedo, the whitening. And it all wraps up with rubedo, the reddening. Black, white, and red. That 3-act structure is our map. Now let's see how Cervantes built his entire story on top of it. Check this out. This is a classic alchemical image, and you can think of it like a symbolic recipe. That word around the edge, vitrol, is actually a Latin acronym. It's an instruction that basically says, visit the interior of the earth, meaning go deep inside yourself, into the darkness, and by purifying it, you will find the hidden stone. The whole idea is a journey into darkness to find the light. Okay, so with our alchemical key in hand, let's go back to the story. It's time to see how all those confusing pieces suddenly click right into place. We're going to map the plot of the story directly onto those 3 alchemical stages. First up, Stage 1, Negredo, the blackening. This is the dark and messy part. It's all about chaos, decay, a total dissolution of the self. It represents the descent into the underworld, where you have to confront your own shadow. It's painful and disorienting by design, because you have to tear down the old you to make way for something new. Now, think about the story. The assault happens at night, in a dark room, and Leocadia is blindfolded. Cervantes just hammers home the idea of absolute darkness. Rodolfo is described as being blinded from the light of understanding. And here's the kicker. Cervantes calls Rodolfo and his friends a pack of wolves. Well, guess what the wolf was a common alchemical symbol for? The raw, untamed, primal matter that you need to begin the great work. That is not a coincidence. It's a code. So, after all that blackness and chaos comes stage 2, albedo, the whitening. This is basically the cleanup phase. It's about washing away all the impurities. For the alchemists, this was the soul emerging from the darkness, cleansed, purified, and ready for the next step.
It's like the first light of dawn after the darkest night.
So, what happens next to Leocadia? She spends 7 years in seclusion, this long, quiet period of metaphorical washing. And during this time, she gives birth to a son, Luisito. And this is the absolute key. In so many alchemical texts, a pivotal moment in the albedo stage is what they call the birth of the child, which symbolizes a new, pure substance being created out of all that initial black chaos. So, you see, Luisito isn't just a plot device. In this alchemical leading, he is the filius philosophorum, the philosopher's child. He's this miraculous product of that dark union, a pure element that carries the essence of both his mother and his father. And he is the key that's going to unlock the final, most important stage of the whole process. And that final stage is rubedo, the reddening. This is the grand finale. This is where the purified opposites, often shown as the sun and moon or a king and queen, are finally brought back together in a sacred marriage, something called a conjunctio. This ultimate union is what creates the perfected substance, the philosopher's stone.
So how does Cervantes get us there? The catalyst is blood. Remember, the title is The Force of Blood. Little Luisito gets run down by a horse and his blood is spilled. This accident, this literal reddening, brings the two families together. Rodolfo returns, sees Leocadia in the light instead of darkness, and his blinded understanding is finally opened. And how does the story end? With their marriage, a perfect symbolic representation of the alchemical conjunctio. So let's just step back for a second. What does this all mean? Why would Cervantes go to all this trouble to embed such a complex code? Well, it completely transforms how we understand the story and Cervantes himself. I mean, this comparison really says it all. Without the key, you have a deeply problematic story that seems to excuse an unforgivable act. But when you see it as an allegory, it turns into this profound map of the soul's journey, from a violent descent into darkness, through purification, to a final enlightened reunion. And it is absolutely critical to understand this. The alchemical interpretation doesn't justify the crime, not at all. It treats the crime as a symbol for that violent, chaotic Negretto stage, the breakdown that has to happen before the soul can be purified and reborn. The darkness is the necessary starting point for the journey to the light. What this reading really does is reveal the sheer genius and depth of Cervantes. He wasn't just writing a simple, shocking story. He was engaging with the huge spiritual and philosophical ideas of his time, creating a story that worked on two levels, as a simple tale for the masses and as a profound esoteric text for anyone who was in the know. And really, that's the biggest takeaway. It forces you to ask, if a story as baffling as The Force of Blood can hold such an elegant hidden structure, what other secrets, what other codes are just waiting to be deciphered in all the books, paintings, and myths we think we already understand?